Welcome to Learn or Be Learned. We all have a story, we're all the hero of our own story, and whether your story is worth reading when it ends is up to you. I'm your host, Shiva Danishekar, and let's get on with episode 5. Okay, so I'm here with Alyssa Forsyth. Hey Alyssa, how you doing?
Hey Shiva, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So to tell the people what you do, you're a Emory student. You have 2 degrees that are joint degrees, so literally it's like 4 degrees, right?
No, it's just 2 degrees actually. They just have long names.
Oh, you're just being humble. You wanna tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so my majors are NBB, which is the abbreviated version of Neuroscience and Behavioral Biology, and Spanish and Portuguese. The NBB major is really popular for pre-medical students at Emory because it requires a lot of the same courses that are pre-medical requirements, such as chemistry, biology, a stats-like course. It has a lot of overlap with those requirements, and additionally, it gives us background in some neuroanatomy, some aspects of psychology that can be useful for the MCAT, so it's a really great track for pre-medical students.
You sound nervous.
What? I'm not nervous. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I should literally put the bloopers, like when we were doing test recordings, into this. I think people would really enjoy that, wouldn't they?
Or you could just not embarrass me like that.
Okay, sure. Cue the bloopers. That's getting edited out as well.
What do you mean this is getting edited out? All of this is getting edited out.
Man, if you could edit out all the shitty, boring parts of your life, you'd be like 1 year old.
Hey! That didn't happen. That
didn't happen.
He's always so dramatic. Every time he takes a sip, goes... Like, every sip of water is the most refreshing thing he's ever had.
You know what I'm actually going to do? I'm going to take snippets of this shit that we just did, the bloopers, and I'm going to put it at the beginning of this podcast.
You better not.
Too late. Anyways. I'm adding that. Okay, so how did you start? How did you realize, maybe MBB made more sense, right? Pre-med degree and whatnot, but how did you start and find your interest with Portuguese and Spanish and just, I guess, languages?
Actually, when I started off my time at Emory, I was planning on pursuing a chemistry and a Spanish major, but I ended up changing both of those, and I changed the chemistry major because when I got to Orgo, I just realized maybe this isn't for me.
I feel like nobody does.
Not too many people. I've met one person who told me that they liked Orgo. It wasn't the worst class. I did like some of the mechanisms, but at the end, it just was not the path that I wanted to pursue. I'm way better at chemistry that's inorganic or chemistry that does not involve physics, but I realized that down the path, I would just have to continue to take more of those kinds of courses. And I started hearing more about this neuroscience and behavioral biology major. A lot of people, as I said, on the pre-medical track at Emory were talking about it. And I was like, this sounds really cool. I can't believe I didn't consider this before. It allows me to take a variety of courses in anthropology, psychology, biology, and neuroscience, of course. And I just really thought that sounded a lot more enjoyable for me, and maybe it would be even more beneficial than a chemistry major to preparing for the MCAT, because the MCAT includes topics like psychology, and in the biology section there's some neuroscience. We talk about hormones, and it's just all related to the brain. So the NBB major, I think, was a very good choice for me. People put too much of an emphasis on taking a chemistry or a biology major for pre-medical students when this is really not the case. You don't even have to be a science major. You can be any major you want to be as long as you take the courses required by the medical schools that you're applying to.
What was your favorite course?
I think the courses I took in anthropology were my favorite because I love the topics of evolution.
Yeah, I really like anthropology, as you already know that. But yeah, we'll definitely get into some anthropology. We should talk about that in a minute. But I want to keep. I think you should talk about a little bit more about your degree. I don't know. I guess in general, what would you suggest people do when they're entering college, trying to figure out what their degree is? Because you said you loved your Portuguese and Spanish, but you didn't initially know that you were going to do that. What would you suggest people do to experiment, find their degree?
Well, I think that people should take some courses that are out of their comfort zone just to test the waters. And if they don't like it, they don't have to continue with those types of courses anymore. I got into the Spanish and Portuguese major because one of the elective options for a Spanish major was Portuguese for Spanish speakers. And so I took that course because I thought it sounded interesting and I love studying foreign languages. So I took it, loved it, and wanted to continue on with it. And I realized that my school had a Spanish and Portuguese major option, which would allow me to continue to really develop my Portuguese abilities as well as maintaining my Spanish abilities. This language skill will be very useful for when I'm a doctor. I'll be able to talk to more patients in their native languages, so it's a more comfortable experience for them. And that's part of why I love learning new languages. But the main reason is just to be able to communicate and learn more about different cultures.
You said pre-med requirements. What advice would you give, high school students about to do pre-medicine, maybe want to be a doctor, but they're not entirely sure? What would be the first step they should take?
There isn't really any one major that I would recommend to pre-medical students. It's really about choosing a major that you're going to enjoy, that you think you're going to do well in, because unfortunately GPA does matter. And lastly, it helps if some of the courses that are required for the major also overlap with those that are required by the medical schools. I think that shadowing a physician is a really good first start because it'll help you determine pretty early on if it's something that you're interested in. If you shadow a surgeon, for example, and you get to the OR and you realize that you cannot stand the sight of blood and you pass out, then maybe you want to start reconsidering what you really want to do. If it's really practical for you to be a doctor, of course, there are some doctor options that don't involve you cutting people open, but a lot of them do. So if you can't stand blood, then you should probably consider other paths. Yeah, shadowing a physician is probably the first thing I'd recommend. And then secondly, if you can find internships early on, if you're in high school and you get an internship, you're kind of set, because when you look at different internships, a lot of the better ones will require you to have experience. And if you start on early and you get internships when you're in high school, then that can be put on your resume and it can maybe help you get a better internship the next summer. That's something that I really wish that I had done in high school, because I had shadowed physicians and I knew that I was fine with the sight of blood and I knew that it was what I wanted to do. But I didn't get any internship experience or research experience, so it was a little bit harder for me to get started in college. These things are important because they give you the experience that will help you decide if you want to really pursue medicine or become a physician, more specifically, since we're talking about pre-med. Also, there's this kind of competitive environment as a pre-medical student. You're always feeling like everyone else is doing more. You know that medical school acceptance is pretty competitive, and I don't know, I definitely have felt like I didn't have enough research experience, and I was scrambling to get more, and it was just a very toxic environment, I think, in some ways. But you have to be stronger than that. You have to realize that you don't have to take the same path as someone else to be successful, and that there are many ways to get to the same point, But yeah, there's this push for internships, shadowing experience, all this, because having a good GPA and having a good MCAT score are not enough. Like, now there's just this insane push to have it all, do all these things, and it just creates an environment where people are pushed to do things that they don't necessarily want to do. They take research positions that they're not actually interested in, and I think it's not the best environment, but you have to stay strong through all this. You should stay true to yourself, do the type of research and internships that you are actually interested in, and try to fight off this toxicity.
Okay, to wrap up, what you're saying is experiment, figure out your degree, enjoy what you do, and from what I understand, you don't have to take a science degree in order to be pre-med. You just have to meet the pre-med requirements. So find what you really like, do the degree that you want, experiment with classes, figure out what that degree is, do what you love, not what you have to, and, shadow, do all these courses. You mentioned MCATs, and you took it, so what would you recommend people pay for or not pay for, courses they should have taken? I don't know, anything to help people prep, right? Because I think that's probably the most stressful thing I've heard people ask is, especially freshmen going into college, they'd be like, what do I need to do for MCATs? It's like, slow down. You're like 3 years away. Like, you have time. Just, I guess, what would you recommend those people? And what would you recommend people that are actually about to take it?
I think that you should probably get some type of book set.
Like Kaplan.
Yeah, like the Kaplan books. I think that those were very helpful just to make sure that you know all the content. They're very in-depth, and probably more in-depth than you actually need to go to study for the MCAT, but it made me feel more secure with the material since I had it all there. I think the other recommendation is UWorld, because if you do the practice problems in UWorld, at the end, they give a really thorough explanation, and you can kind of explore the content further using the UWorld question bank. And I know a lot of people who would just say to ditch the book set. And if you're comfortable doing that, ditch the book set, because I know it contains a lot of unnecessary things in it. But a lot of people, the recommendation is just do practice problems, and more practice problems. So you get really comfortable, you develop the test-taking strategies, and you can learn content in the process of doing the practice problems as well. Oh, yeah. I almost forgot about all the Anki cards, too. I downloaded the Miles Down deck that I found on Reddit, and I went through all of those cards before I took the MCAT, and I think it really helped. They have links to the Khan Academy videos that are relevant to the topics as well, and if you are having trouble understanding why you got the card wrong, then you can just click on the Khan Academy links.
I heard Khan Academy was getting shut down on the MCAT section.
Yeah, it's getting shut down September 2021.
That's crazy. I don't know what the legality behind that is, but that's crazy that they would shut down a free service that seems so helpful for a lot of students.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there was like some legal issue with that, but the Khan Academy resources were really nice because the MCAT can get so expensive and like all the study materials are so expensive. So it's nice that Khan Academy offered that free resource that is just really thorough. So it's sad to see this going.
But yeah, that's awesome. I like your MBB, neuroscience behavioral biology, and I really like your Portuguese and Spanish degree. I don't know a lot of Spanish, but I think one of the first phrases I learned in Spanish was "Tú eres mi puta." And
yeah, that's like the most important thing that you need to know how to say in Spanish.
Oh, yeah, okay, good. Yeah, so when I go to Mexico and I'm like paying like the bill or something, I just have to say "Tú eres mi puta," right?
Yeah, you're right on track to
cool.
achieving fluency.
And I should just okay, cool, thank you. You said anthropology was your favorite course, right? What about it?
Well, I like talking about evolution a lot because I went to a Christian school from when I was 2 years old till 8th grade. and we never talked about evolution at all. And I think it's because the school wasn't allowed to cover that topic because it kind of interfered with the creation story that's in the Bible. And so I didn't end up learning about evolution really until junior year of high school. And when I learned about it, I was just like, this makes so much sense. There's so much evidence to support it, and everything in biology just makes sense through the lens of evolution. So I was really just astonished when I learned about evolution for the first time. And
no, I get that.
I was just so surprised that I hadn't learned about it when I was younger.
Yeah, no, for sure, because obviously you went from a very strong one-sided culture to exploring at Emory various cultures and even taking interest in Spanish and Portuguese. I guess it only makes sense that you seeing a whole nother perspective of science as being a science major as well and a pre-med student that would astonish you. And that it's crazy because a lot of things in anthropology, I mean, to be quite honest, before I knew I was going to be an anthropology major, I didn't even know what the hell anthropology was. Actually, to this day, when my parents still ask me what anthropology is, it's like the same question over and over again. And it's, and for those of you that don't know, it's like the study of human culture, the study of humans, interactions and just evolution and whatnot. And, and that's just really broad because there's a lot of different things like cultural anthropology. What most people are probably familiar with is paleoanthropology, which is, the Indiana Jones shit that, where you like go find fossils. I did that. It is way harder than it sounds. And it sounds hard already. It is hot. It's like hot. It's like a lot of work. And I feel like I like pick up something. I'm like, yeah, this might be a fossil. I look at it. It's like a rock. Oh shoot. I probably shouldn't say fossil. Yeah. I was just saying about like, I don't know. Anthropology is very fascinating to me as well, obviously, but I like how you can kind of see different perspectives. Cultural anthropology is really cool because you get to do ethnographies, which just goes like you basically integrate yourself in a culture and you like learn. You just sit back and learn. I think that one's very interesting. I know a couple of professors that have gone to Bolivia, Papua New Guinea, Kenya, Ethiopia, several places. It's great. Okay, so let's talk about at least one anthro topic in particular, right? What was your favorite topic in anthropology? Was it primates? Was it mating, differentiations in culture? Was it, like how animals have like different like polygamy, like polyandry, like all that stuff? Or was it, evolution and micro and macroevolution, cultural biological evolution? Like pick one topic that was, there's so many I can keep going. Fire hypothesis, gut brain hypothesis, so many. Pick one. I put you on the spot.
Well, there's just so many topics in anthropology that I learned about and loved. I did like learning about primates. Bonobos were my absolute favorite, by the way. They have the biggest balls. Yeah, so out of all the primates, at least, they have the biggest balls. And that's my biggest takeaway from anthropology. Just kidding. And they have female dominance in their society. That's like the other thing that I remember. And of course, like everything, there's an evolutionary explanation for the big balls. So the biggest determinant of fitness is the ability to reproduce. And so the thing with bonobos is that they're very promiscuous. So the females have sex with a lot of different guys, and then the guys want to make sure that it's their sperm that impregnates the female so that they have their offspring and they successfully reproduce. And if they have bigger balls, then that means that they have more sperm. And if they have a bigger sperm count, it means that there's more of a chance that they're going to be able to get the girl pregnant. So strength in numbers,
What are the odds I'm going to title this episode like Premed, MCATs, and Bonobo Balls? Oh my god, that's crazy. Apes are very interesting creatures as well. Who was that one ape that died that was really famous, had a name? I don't know. It was like she could do sign language and stuff. I don't know. What's her name? I don't know. I'm probably just going to interject in this podcast and be like, hey guys, I'm jumping in right here.
that it was this shit and then go back. But anyways, continue. So I'm going to jump in here real quick, and I looked it up, and her name is Coco. So we're just going to go right back to the original clip.
So in the anthropology courses that I've taken for my MBB major, I learned about the expensive tissue hypothesis, which is basically this idea that over the course of time, our GI tracts have shrunk, and this is like when our GI tracts are smaller when compared to our primate cousins, as well as like we're making an assumption here that our GI tract has also decreased in size when compared to our ancestors. And this is because our brain has had increased energy demands. So we've had more activity going on in our brains, which requires more energy. And, there's only so much energy to go around. So the energy, that's all about energy allocation. So we need more energy in our brain, which means that we need to have less energy going to other locations, such as the GI tract. And this is also assisted by the fact that we have been eating more digestible foods. So we started cooking our meats, and this makes it more digestible. And we've been ingesting less food with a lot of cellulose, which we can't digest. So when we eat more digestible foods, we have less energy demands from our guts, and then we can allocate that energy to the brain, where we need that for our social interactions, for example. And that's kind of just the basis of that hypothesis.
I guess to summarize what you were saying, the gut-brain hypothesis, also known as expensive tissue hypothesis, was basically where the gut shrank over time because it became easier to digest food. We had easier digestible food as well as like you mentioned, fire, which contributed energy allocation to other organs like the brain, and that evolved with brain expansion. And that, isn't it like 70% of our energy from the food we consume goes to our brain? I think it was like I don't know. I think I saw this on Joe Rogan's podcast. I don't know, somewhere they're talking about how like chess players burn like 6,000 calories because they just like, they're thinking so intensely, like their brain just consumes so much. So like next time you're like, oh shit, I need to lose some weight, like I should go to the gym. You should just think really hard. Just like sit there and be like think really hard. Maybe you'll burn more calories. I don't know. The other hypothesis was the social brain hypothesis?
So the social brain hypothesis is that our brains have expanded in size over time, like when compared to our ancestors, because like to allow for more complex social interactions. And we have this evidence of like our ancestors' brain size based on like their skull size. So we don't actually have tissue to really fully know how big their brain was, but we can infer from the size of their skulls how big their brains were. But essentially, the foundation of this social brain hypothesis is a comparative study where you look at different social groups for different animals and then compare that to their relative brain size. So like the brain size compared to their body. And we see that as social groups increase in size, their brains also increase in size. So species with a bigger social group will also have a bigger brain relative to their bodies. And humans have a bigger brain than would be expected for our body sizes. So part of this hypothesis is explaining why our brains have become so big for our bodies. And one of the explanations is maybe it's because we've expanded our social networks and we have these abilities for language, which other animals don't have. I mean, other animals can communicate, and they can communicate quite complex ideas in some cases, but they don't have the same verbal abilities as us. And so that makes us kind of unique, and maybe that's why we have a relatively large brain size. And maybe parts of our cortex, like Broca's area and Wernicke's area, that are for language abilities, also evolve to meet these social demands.
That's really cool. I mean, especially since you're, neuroscience, that must really play into the whole, anthropology talks about, brain evolution, and then neuroscience starts going into what exactly that brain does for us. And
yeah, and being a Spanish and Portuguese major, those are some of my favorite topics, ones that connect language and evolution and neuroscience. I love those topics.
Yeah, Wernicke's area and the Broca's area really goes into language, speech, and I think it's just all interconnected. That's the thing, like, about liberal arts, right? It's almost all interconnected, one way or another. Whether maybe some of them are a little bit of a stretch, but they're all like somewhat connected in some sort of way, right? Poetry majors, English majors to science, biology to chemistry, biology to anthropology. It's very interesting. I met someone yesterday, actually, so I have a Chipotle obsession, and I go there so much, I made a friend there, and she is a college student, and her major was kinesthetics, so like body movement, stuff like that, and like how fitness and HIIT cardio, right, high intensity interval training. I just thought even that's related to science, energy allocation and movement and body metabolism. And so I guess to go right back to where about, figuring out your major, it's all like where your interest lies, but you should totally branch out and take as many classes as you can, because you learn a lot of things and it's not going to go to a waste. You can really connect them somehow.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. I think during your pre-med years, you should be exploring other course options. Even if you definitely want to pursue medicine, it's good to get a different perspective from another course, like especially a liberal arts course, into something so different.
Mm-hmm.
And you won't get that opportunity to take a bunch of other courses when you're in medical school. It's a more specific set path for you. And so you really need to take advantage of that, the opportunity in undergraduate years.
But yeah, no. Like I took a poetry course, and that was very interesting. I actually was shit at it, very bad at it. So there was 2 classes, and they alternate. So by the time I enrolled into the second course without taking the first, and it doesn't really matter, but everyone that was in the second course took the first course basically. So everyone was better at poetry, and the first course was just reading and analyzing poetry, and the second was writing and presenting. And I took the second one being like, oh, I kind of want to dabble in poetry. I feel like it'll help not only your like creative side, but also writing skills and different sort of, just different neural connectivity and understanding and learning. So I wanted to take it due to my interests. We all had to write our first poem and present it. And I was so nervous because I never did this. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do. And I was like, I like fitness. I'll write about that. And I wrote like this poem about fitness. And we had to present, and then I was like, okay with it. It wasn't bad. It was like Dr. Seuss-y, like Dr. Seuss-esque or whatever. It was okay. It was really rhymey. It was like, I feel like it would have been better rapping it than like, I don't know, like doing my like dramatic poetry voice. I don't know. But then I started hearing others, and it was like the heart strikes crimson red while the tears are, teal blue as they create an ocean wave of sound drum beats, and I was like, oh shit. Like mine was like, I like to eat food on plates, and plates every day make the gains stay. And it was like really bad, and I was like, oh no. And it was my turn, and he was like, you don't have to. Or he was like, the professor at first was like, I can read it if you want. And I was like, no, this has to be done. No, but it was like a sacrificial thing. I was like, it has to be. I like stood up and I like started reading it. And I kid you not, I looked around and as I was reading it, people were like rolling their eyes and shit. And I was like, oh my god, people hate it. But I was like, I understand why they hate it. It was really bad. I say this story because get out of your comfort zone. Really, I mean, so what? Everyone's gonna be bad at everything you try that's new. Like if you were naturally good at it, then you might not be human. So screw you. For being naturally good at everything or something. I don't know. But anyways, what I'm saying is like, I got better. I got way better. And by the time I read my last poem in that class, he literally, after it was done, he goes, I just really want to take a minute before we even like give you critiques and like how to improve, just to say that you did like you've grown a lot in this one semester. And I was like, I really appreciate that because it was very true. I think you should take as many classes as you can and as you're able and experiment, get out your comfort zone. It's like a perspective gaining type of thing. I really think you should branch out as far as you can. And if you really are like, oh, I don't like giving like presentations in front of people, really take that class. Because if it's like really a concern for you and you really care about your grade or something and you're like, I don't know because I'm going to be bad at it or I'm scared at it and it's going to hurt my grade, talk to the professor. They're oftentimes very understanding. And if you come to them like the first day and be like, hi, this is who I am. The reason I'm taking your class is because I'm very terrified of giving speeches and I'm very bad at it or I've never done it. Can you help me? And if you go to them and like ask for help, they will be more understanding, especially with their grading, I'm sure. But yeah, no, I mean, I guess on the topic of picking classes, I guess lastly, what would you really suggest pre-meds take in particular that would help them with, pre-med, medical school, and as well as MCATs?
Yeah, so for the MCAT, I'll start there. You don't have to take all of the pre-medical requirements before you take the MCAT, but I would recommend taking as many as you can before because then you'll have a stronger foundation in those chemistry, biology, and physics material, and having that strong foundation will really help you on those sections for the MCAT. One of the courses that I took that is not a pre-med requirement, but that was really, really useful for the MCAT was this human physiology course. Human Phys went over a lot of the organ systems that we needed to know for the MCAT, and if you've started studying, you know that for the biology section, you have to know a lot of organ systems and in pretty big depth, but you don't talk about that in chemistry or biology courses that are required for pre-med, because in those courses we talk about more on the microscopic level or just plants or whatever. It's not a lot of the organ systems. So human phys was a big one. And the other recommendation I have is biochemistry. And that's because on the MCAT, there's a section called biology and biochemistry. And so obviously it's good to get that course because it is really highly relevant to the material that's on the MCAT. No, we have these courses. We had 4 semesters of chemistry and 2 of biology that we had to take on the pre-med track. And a lot of the stuff that we learned is not on the MCAT and it's not very relevant to medical school. We learned about a lot of topics that are just not very relevant, but maybe are interesting. Some of them maybe not, but it's okay. That's just a part of the journey. And beyond those 2, I think you really should take the pre-med requirements before because I don't know. For me, I had a very strong foundation in my chemistry and biology courses, but I hadn't taken physics since freshman year of high school, and I had no desire to learn it on my own. I have never had a very strong footing in physics. It's always been my least favorite science, and so it was like the most challenging one for me to study for the MCAT. And for me, I would recommend taking physics before you take the MCAT, but that's entirely up to you and your level of comfort with physics as a topic.
Well, I guess to, wrap up everything we said, UWorld's good. Take some books, maybe Kaplan's a little overboard. Anki's great for MCATs. Try courses like anatomy and physiology, other classes. If you don't feel like physics is your strong suit, maybe take physics before the MCAT. Some people take it after. Experiment as many classes as you can. Get comfortable with being outside your comfort zone and explore classes and really, enrich your college experience.
So the thing I want to finish off with is the whole weed out process of medical school, like the pre-med requirements, chemistry, biology, physics. We learn so many things in those courses that are unnecessarily difficult. To be a doctor, you don't need to know all the plant genuses and you don't need to know all of the mechanisms that go into a chemical reaction. Those are just things that they add on top of our workload to see if we are strong. And if you're not doing well in one of those courses, that doesn't mean you're not going to be a good physician. you know your abilities, and you know that being a physician goes far beyond anything that they can test you on in those courses, because it's practical. It's like hands-on experience that makes you a good physician. You can only really test if you're going to be a good physician by observing how you behave in a clinical setting, how good you are with patients, and how well you are with a scalpel, I guess, if you're going to be a surgeon. And I don't know, just don't let the weed out process get to you. If you're struggling in one of those courses, stay strong, push through. You know that one bad grade isn't going to kill you, and you can still get into med school with a lower GPA and a lower MCAT score if you have other areas of your resume that can boost you up. Just don't give up. You can get there, and stay strong.
And I guess lastly, Bonobo Balls.
And that's really all you need to know. If you know that, you're set for life.
Well, Alyssa, thanks for being on the show. I really had a lot of fun. This is great.
Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you getting this far. If you guys could leave me a review or a rating in Apple Podcasts, that'd be great. And if you could follow my LinkedIn page for show notes and more if you want, that is fantastic. I hope you guys have a great day, and thanks for listening. Bye.